You know, there are game updates, and then there are game updates, the kind that really shake things up, especially if you're building stuff inside the game.
Hmm.
Well, buckle up, because that's pretty much what landed on June 7th, 2025. The Fortnite ecosystem update, v36.00.
Yeah, this was less of a simple patch and
Yeah.
more like a full overhaul, honestly. It touches basically everything.
Like what specifically?
Well, you've got foundational engine stuff, brand new creative tools, items, even big changes to how you manage projects and understand how players are interacting. It's a lot.
It really sounds like, and just looking at the patch notes, the overviews, all the chatter, it's a deep dive just to get through it all.
Totally.
So that's our mission today, right? We're taking the sources, the official notes, the summaries, what creators are actually saying, and we're going to try and, pull out the key nuggets.
Cut through the noise a bit.
Exactly. What really matters if you're building in Fortnite Creative or UAM right now? Consider this your fast track to getting up to speed on v36.000.
Sounds good. We can walk through it step by step. Maybe start with those big underlying shifts,
It's a good idea.
then hit the new tools, the workflow stuff, and maybe touch on what the community's finding out now it's live.
Perfect. Okay, let's start with what feels like a really big one. The scene graph beta.
Yeah.
What exactly is this? A new engine layer?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Fundamentally, Scene Graph is aiming to unify how the entire world is represented.
Unify.
Yeah, bring everything, the visuals, the sounds, the gameplay bits, the effects, bring it all into one single coherent structure.
Okay, so it's like all the different parts of your level finally being in one place, designed to talk to each other easily.
Pretty much. And the really critical part is that this whole structure, it's fully exposed and controllable using Verse.
Ah, okay, so it's not just hidden engine stuff.
No, not at all. This is foundational for, future scalability. It lets creators script everything and, crucially, do it with high performance.
And the notes mentioned this helps with workflow efficiency, richer experiences. How does having everything verse accessible do that?
Well, by exposing core things like meshes, materials, collisions, sounds, VFX directly to Verse, it just simplifies complex interactions.
Right.
Instead of needing, maybe complicated device setups or workarounds for certain effects, you can potentially just code it directly. React to gameplay events precisely.
Makes sense.
And they've also got this new prefab workflow built on scene graph entities. It's designed to make building and scripting complex, reusable things much, much easier.
So spawning and managing whole interactive systems becomes simpler in Verse.
That's the goal, yeah. A few lines of code instead of maybe a whole mess of devices.
That does sound powerful.
Yeah.
So what can creators actually start playing with right now in this beta?
Okay, so the initial release includes access to meshes, materials, collisions, sounds, VFX, and key parts of player interaction.
The core visual and interactive stuff.
Exactly.
And this is just the start. They're planning to expand it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The roadmap they talked about includes adding more components, improving that prefab workflow, things like inline editing, better support for fab content within these entities,
Okay.
and, importantly, deeper links with the existing creative devices people already use. It's really setting up for a new way of building.
And if you want to jump in now, there's documentation and an example island available.
Yep, the Scene Graph feature example islands is out there, plus the docs. Resources are ready.
Okay, cool. Now let's shift to something that might feel a bit less like a shiny new toy and more like, wait, what happened to my coordinates?
Ah, yes.
The coordinate system change.
Yeah.
FRU to LUF. This seems fundamental. Why did they do this?
It is a big underlying change, yeah. Moving from forward right up, FRU, to left up forward, or LUF. Main reason, industry alignment.
Industry alignment. With what? Like other game engines?
Mostly with standard 3D creation tools, that Maya, and also industry standards like USD, Universal Scene Description. So it just makes UAF system consistent with how a lot of professional pipelines work. Should simplify things like asset importing and tool integration down the line.
Right. Makes sense long term. So where will we actually notice this change? In UEFN itself?
You'll see in the UEFN interface, yeah.
Yeah.
In the details panel when you're looking at transforms.
Okay.
Visually in the viewport gizmo, the little arrows. And importantly in verse code if you're working directly with transforms.
So rotations, positions, all that uses LUF now.
Correct. All transforms, world space, local space, calculate in verse, they all use LUF now. Rotations are handled a bit differently too to match.
Now this sounds like it could break things. If I have a project I was working on, does it just mess everything up? Do I need to rewrite my verse scripts?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The good news is, for published island stuff that's already live, for players generally, no changes are needed.
Oh, okay. That's a relief.
The system handles the conversion for those.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you have unpublished content, especially anything you were maybe prototyping with scene graph in v35, that is affected. If you're actively working with transforms in unpublished projects, you'll need to be aware of this and potentially adjust your logic or setup.
So a bit of an adjustment period for ongoing projects maybe, but aiming for smoother sailing later by matching those 3D standards.
Precisely. It's a technical alignment that should pay off over time, especially if you work with external tools.
All right, let's switch gears from the deep tech stuff to the fun new tools we get to actually play with. Some cool new devices and items dropped.
Yes, 3 main new devices to highlight. Progress-based mesh, the player movement device, and the hero chest.
Okay, progress-based mesh. Tell me about that one. What does it let you do?
This one's really neat for visual feedback. It lets you set up stages where the device swaps between different meshes or materials based on player actions or events.
Oh, interesting.
The default example they give is like a slurp jar filling up.
Yeah.
But in UEFN, you can slot in your own custom meshes, custom materials.
So I could make like a plant visibly grow as players water it, or maybe a fuel tank fills up as you add resources. A tip jar getting fuller.
Exactly. That's precisely the kind of thing it's perfect for. It gives a really direct, satisfying visual cue for progress or the state of something in your game.
You can even smooth the transitions.
Yeah, using material parameters, you can make the change between stages look really slick, not just a sudden pop. Adds polish.
Very cool. Super useful for objectives.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the player movement device?
This one gives you much finer control over specific player movement attributes, things like speed, jump height, gravity.
More control than the standard island settings.
Yeah, exactly. The idea is you can really dial in a unique feel for your game mode. If you want a floatier jump for a platformer, or maybe faster strafing for an arena shooter, this device lets you tweak those core movement values.
Does it let you change everything, like animations or controls?
No, the notes are clear on that. It doesn't customize input bindings or the actual animations, and it won't override movement tied to specific items, like a grapple gun or vehicles.
Okay.
But it does control those core attributes, walk speed, jump height, gravity scale, air control, that kind of stuff, that really define the fundamental feel of moving around.
Gotcha. And the third new one, the hero chest. Chests are obviously a big deal.
This one is a pretty significant upgrade for chests. It's the first one really designed with creator control front and center. You find it in the chest and ammo gallery.
And what makes it special?
The big things are user options, events, functions, and crucially, full verse support.
Ah, verse control for chests, finally.
Yep. You can set it to be locked or unlocked and decide if that's per player or global. It supports different ranks so you can control the loot quality.
Nice.
And because it's verse enabled, you can script when it appears, the conditions for unlocking it, what happens when it's opened. Way more flexible than before for tiered loot or rewards.
That opens up a lot of possibilities. Now, besides the brand new ones, they also tweaked some existing devices too, right?
They did. The fixed angle camera got a really useful feature called point of interest framing.
What does that do?
It automatically tries to adjust the camera view panning, zooming slightly within limits you set to keep players in the frame. Great for cutscenes or specific gameplay camera setups.
Oh, handy.
The armored transport spawner finally got a proper preview mesh, so you can actually see it in the editor.
Yeah.
Small thing, but helpful.
Yeah.
The Prop-O-Matic gives better feedback now if you try to zap something it can't handle. And a cool one for animators.
Yeah.
The character device now supports Live Link in UEFN.
Live link, like motion capture.
Yeah, you can stream external motion capture data directly into the editor for that character.
Wow, okay. And speaking of characters, loads of new outfits were added.
A huge drop, 105 new character outfits usable across all the character-based devices. Adds a ton more visual variety for creators right out of the box.
That's great.
And it's worth mentioning, they specifically called out fixes based on community reports too, like issues with the prop mover device, vehicles not breaking small props correctly, and fixing that all jam loops category visibility. It definitely shows they're listening to creator feedback on device bugs.
Good to see. Okay, devices are covered. What about new items? Weapons, things to actually use in-game.
Yep, quite a few new items and weapons added. But one really stands out because it adds a totally new mechanic, the shove item.
The shove item, you mean? Literally pushing people.
Exactly, that's an item you equip, uses stamina, lets you give another player a short push.
Ooh.
And here's the interesting part. Other players can't see if you have it equipped.
No way.
That
That adds a whole sneaky tactical layer. Pushing people off cliffs. Interrupting their aim.
Definitely opens up new tactical options. It's kind of like a utility interaction. They initially put it under weapons, but they're moving it to the items category in the next update, 36.0, which makes more sense.
Yeah, it's not really about damage. Okay, and you mentioned others. Tracking Visor, Lawless Rift Launcher.
Yeah, Tracking Visor, Lawless Rift Launcher, Mist Gauntlets, and a few intriguing unstable weapons, too. Definitely gives creators more toys to build interesting gameplay around.
More tools in the toolbox is always good.
Absolutely. Expands what's possible.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit. What about improvements that help us actually build and manage our islands better? Anything new on the conversation device front?
Yes, the conversation device got some really nice new nodes. Things like hide conversations and show conversations.
Ah, so you can manage multiple dialogues more easily?
Yeah, potentially have players talking to multiple characters or managing more complex branching flows. Plus, new nodes like set conversation material and play conversation animation.
Ooh, visual changes tied to dialogue.
Right. You can make the UI itself react visually, maybe change appearance or play little animations during the conversation. Makes it feel much more dynamic and integrated.
That's a big step up for interactive storytelling. And speaking of conversations, didn't the template move?
It did, yeah. The conversation template in UEFN isn't under feature templates anymore. It's moved over to the user interface template section.
Oh, the move.
Seems like it's part of a bigger push to provide more specific examples and updates for building unique UI, and Conversation UI is a big part of that. They plan to add more there.
Okay, makes sense. Now, this next one sounds like a huge quality of life win for testing. New test player behaviors.
Oh yeah, this is something creators have wanted for ages. You now have built-in options for how test players act in your UAFN session.
Like what?
The two main ones are random movement. They'll just wander to random spots and back and follow player. If you crouch, they'll pathfind towards you.
That's incredibly useful for testing triggers or AI interactions, and you can make custom behaviors too.
You can. Using NPC character definitions, you can script your own logic for how the test player should behave. It's a massive boost for testing complex scenarios without needing actual players online.
Fantastic. Okay, moving to some back-end stuff. Unreal Revision Control, URC, got an update.
It did. They updated the underlying backend system for URC to a newer version. This is now the default for any new UAFN projects you start.
And existing projects.
They'll be migrated gradually over time. You might not notice much difference visually right away, but this new backend paves the way for future improvements to revision control.
But is there an immediate benefit, something we get now?
Yes, and it's a really big one. Automatic personal backups.
Automatic backups, tell me more.
Every single time you hit save in UAFN, a remote backup is automatically created just for you on a personal branch. It's like a safety net.
Wow, so even if I mess up locally or haven't checked in properly?
You should have a recent backup stored remotely you can potentially recover from. It's huge for peace of mind, preventing lost work.
That is genuinely massive. What a great feature.
It really is. They do mention a small side effect. You might see gaps in the revision numbers in your history panel.
Why is that?
Because those personal backups also use up revision numbers behind the scenes, even though they don't show in the main project history. But, small price to pay for that safety net.
Totally worth it. Okay, switching gears again. Data and discoverability. Some big news here, too.
Huge news, arguably. The Fortnite Data API, the thing that gave metrics for Epic's own games.
Yeah.
Well, as of June 9th, it's been expanded. It now includes engagement and retention metrics for all creator-made islands.
Wait, really? Data for everyone?
Data for everyone.
Yeah.
How many players? How long they stay? Are they coming back? It's a massive step towards empowering creators with real, actionable insights to improve their islands.
That's a genuine game changer for serious creators.
It absolutely is. Makes the whole ecosystem feel more open and data-driven for creators.
And related to that, more info on Fortnite Discover as well.
Yep. They released new detailed documentation explaining how Discover works, the tech behind it, and even shared their long-term vision for the system.
So it's less of a black box now.
Much less. Creators get technical details and a better understanding of how visibility and performance in Discover might be influenced. More transparency, more agency.
That's fantastic. More tools to understand how players actually find your stuff?
Exactly. Demystify is a really crucial part of the player journey.
And speaking of finding things, the documentation itself got a big reorganization.
It did. The whole Epic developer community documentation site has been restructured. It's supposed to follow a more logical game development flow now.
Like from getting started all the way to publishing.
Yeah. Get started, examples, gameplay, level design, art, publishing. It should make finding specific information much, much easier.
Sound like a definite quality of life improvement.
It really needed it. And they also consolidated all the game collections, like all the Lego templates and stuff, into one easy-to-find spot. No more hunting around.
Nice. Okay, and beyond those big headlines, there were just a ton of smaller editor and UEFN fixes too, right?
Oh yeah, a whole slew of them. Little things like a new UEFN island setting allow team indicators, which might give a slight performance boost.
Okay.
You can now finally modify read-only values and widgets, fixing a UI design annoyance. Some new editor keyboard shortcuts too, curl, plus right-click for the add menu, R and F for local camera up-down.
Just general polish.
General polish, plus lots of specific fixes for rendering, localization, revision control, and targeted improvements for different disciplines too.
Like what?
Things for animation and cinematics, environment and landscapes, like Sastra landscape saves, better undo, painting fixes, Visual Effects Niagara got struck support, material fixes, verse fixes for things like dock strings and teleportation. They really touched almost every area.
Wow, okay, so that covers the massive amount of new stuff Epic put in. But big updates always get tested by the real world, by the community digging in. What about feedback and bugs found after the update?
Right. The sources did touch on that. And first, it's good that Epic actually listed several community bug fixes in the patch notes.
Things they fixed based on reports.
Exactly. They mentioned fixing the prop mover event triggers, the issue with vehicles sometimes not breaking small props properly, and that all jam loops category bug shows they are acting on reports.
That's positive. But were there new issues reported since the update went live?
Yes, the sources highlighted a couple of specific ones reported on the forums. One was from user Yashiatani about a verse variable sync issue.
Okay, what's the problem there?
It sounds like if you have an editable array of a class type in verse, and you copy parameters from one element and paste them onto another,
Yeah.
then changes you make later to either of those elements seem to affect both of them. They sync up when they shouldn't.
Ooh, that could definitely cause weird behavior if you're trying to set up unique instances of something.
For sure. The report gives steps to reproduce it. Epic has logged it, FORT 922419, and marked it unconfirmed for now, meaning it's in their queue to investigate.
Okay, under investigation. Any others mentioned?
There was another report from user Mixter about problems joining UEFN edit sessions.
How so?
Apparently, after the update, team members couldn't join an active edit session using the usual join game button in the social menu. That was the standard way for collaborators to jump in.
So that key collaboration feature might be broken for some.
That's what the report suggests. Again, Epic logged it, FORT 922325, also marked unconfirmed, and waiting for their team to reproduce and verify.
All right, so a couple of potentially significant post-update bugs reported by the community now on Epic's radar. It's always part of the process with big releases, I guess.
It is. And interestingly, the source specifically labeled community comments actually said no community comments this round.
Huh. So maybe meaning no general thematic feedback compiled, just those specific bug reports through the official channels?
Could be. Or maybe just a quiet period for broader commentary right after the drop.
Okay, well, zooming back out then, v36.00 was clearly a massive, massive update.
Monumental. Really, you've got foundational shifts like scene graph that feels like the future direction and the coordinate system change, which is about long-term alignment.
Plus all those powerful new creative tools, progress-based mesh, player movement, that super flexible hero chest, and items like the shove adding new mechanics.
And don't forget the infrastructure wins.
Yeah.
The automatic URC backups are huge for safety. The data API expansion is a game changer for creators wanting insights. More transparency on Discover, better docs.
Yeah, it all adds up. Every piece, from the big engine changes down to the small bug fixes, shapes the environment that you, the listener, are building in. Understanding these changes is really key to using the platform's power as it keeps evolving.
Definitely. This update really signals that the ecosystem is dynamic, it's growing, and your potential as a creator within it is growing right alongside it.
So we really encourage you to take what we've talked about and actually try it out, maybe as a little action item. Just pick one new thing from this update. Maybe it's the progress-based mesh. Try adding some visual feedback. Or maybe play with the new test player behaviors. Or think about how that hero chest could change your loot system. Just pick one thing and build it into your next project.
Start small, yeah. Kick the tires on something new.
Exactly.
And maybe leave you with this thought. With Scene Graph aiming to make everything scriptable in verse eventually, and the data API giving you all this insight into player behavior, what kind of really novel gameplay, what kind of emergent experiences could you build now that were just impossible before this update? What does that unlock?